Do you even know what is in your seed treatment? You might say you do, but do you really? We're going to dig into the nitty-gritty on seed treatments in this special episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
Welcome to XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, where real farmers share real insights and real results to help you improve your farming operation. And now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve. I got a great one for you today because I got a great guest. He's a 30-year veteran of this industry. He's out of Fargo, North Dakota, and he actually was in my audience at least several times when he worked for a different agricultural company when I was speaking at those functions. His name is Paul Johnson. His title is Seed Treatment Portfolio Manager. Seed Treatment Portfolio Manager. And you know what? In 4.5 years of me doing this job for XtremeAg, in the hundreds and hundreds of Cutting the Curve podcasts, and also the videos that we have done on the farms of the XtremeAg guys, and then being at places like Commodity Classic and Farm Progress Show, the one topic we have never covered. We've talked a lot about food soil balance, and we've talked a lot about different herbicides and how to cut back on $10 of spend and fertility. You know what we've never talked about? Seed treatment. And what did you say before I hit the record button? If you're going to build a house, it's the most important thing you do. The most important thing you do, get the foundation right so you have a quality house. And you said, Paul, seed treatment is the foundation for a plant. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you, Damian. Seed treatment certainly is the foundation. It's got to support everything. Once the seed is in the ground, it's, suspect to various pestilence out there, environmental hazards or weather, climate, pests or whatever. So if you can start your seed off growing strong, it's going to help get out of the ground, grow quicker, a little bit bigger vigor. The one aspect of it is generally when growers are walking fields or even at harvest, they don't see anything that what happens below the soil, right? So you're relying on your seed treatment, do everything below ground. And just because your seed is treated and is colored, because that's the law, you don't really understand what's on it unless you ask. And so there's a big education process with UPL here to make sure people understand what are you actually getting on the seed you buy.
So when I asked the question, and again, I'm not in any way being mean, when I opened the thing up, Paul, and said, do you even know what's in your seed treatment? You might say you do, but do you really? And that's in no way being mean. If you're a farmer, you've got a lot of things to keep up. Okay, the tractor, you've got your pricing, you've got your marketing of your crop, you've got relationships with all of your landlords, you've got to manage your employees or family or whoever, and then you've got the seasonality of it, and then you got the crop inputs. And so you can see where this sort of digging into seed treatment gets a little bit dropped through the cracks because of all the priorities that I have. But like you said, it's a little bit like not monitoring whether your basement is got, a foundational water problem or something. You ignore it because it's not sexy and it's maybe not top of mind, but it sure as hell is important.
Yeah, every grower, they're doing their farm planning, business planning right around harvest time for the next year, right? A lot of them are buying seed, booking their seed company, buying with their ag retailer. The simple question is a lot of times you just check the box. Do you want to treat it or not? Well, okay, you're going to buy fungicide only or fungicide and insecticide, or do you want nematicides with it, inoculants? I think people need to understand just a little bit better for what they're getting. It's this stuff, the technology today is so much improved what's happened over the last, 50 years in this business. I mean, there's so many good products out there and there's such high loads, or you want to call high active on low use rates. So they don't take up any space. Mm-hmm. You're not planting we call it naked seed anymore. The stuff we're using, does it plant? I mean, all these growers are getting bigger. They're going faster, precision planting, mm-hmm. high-speed planters. When you're going 8, 10, 12 miles an hour, throwing that and trying to get seed singulation in there. I mean, all this stuff goes into what a good seed treatment is and does and how it acts. And so the big thing is to understand the actives, right? Because if you're going to be, let's say you're planting in northern Indiana and the soil temperature is 41 degrees. I mean, in all likelihood, you could have a Pythium problem that could result later down the road into Phytophthora or SDS or any of that. So making sure you understand what you're planting into is core to understanding what you need to have put on your seed to start.
And the thing is, first off, what you just said there, so I appreciate the personalization, northern Indiana, where I am, and there is a lot of seed that gets put in the ground that I don't think in the old days you did that. And we've gotten away with it because of the genetics, and we're pushing envelopes and getting out there earlier. Grandpa out there with his Model B wasn't out there planting into 41 degrees soil. By the way, in another episode of The Greenery, we talked about that with one of our guys, and he said, tell you why half the bad decisions get made that are sins against the soil. Cabbed tractors. Nobody was out there planting into 41 degree soil when it was 38 degrees ambient air temperature when you had to do it on a John Deere 4020 with open cab. Jesus, you wait. Now you got a comfortable cab. You can do all that. Anyway, so we arguably need seed treatment now than we've ever needed it because of all these reasons. And there's the pressure to spend less on all your insecticides, and then environmental pressure. And the good news is, I think the technology is there, but you tell me.
Yeah, like the one big thing that, I think everybody understands, the seed cost is insurmountable, right? Precision planting, we're seed singulation, we're specifically now targeting a number of seeds per acre. It used to be bags, right? Or used to be throw a couple bushels in there. I mean, it's not that simple anymore. And the seed treatments, for the cost of them, are so relatively inexpensive versus the value of the seed.
Yeah.
So when, the whole ensemble of products you have on there, you really want every one of them seed to grow, okay? And you get them germinate, and you want them to come out of the ground uniformly, okay, and grow vigorously. And that's what these seed treatments are doing. I mean, and if you come into problems like nematodes, you can prevent a lot of that. I mean, a lot of the resistance that's built into the genetics is no longer working. It's been around since the early 60s, so its resistance is built up. So we need other alternative measures to control some of these pests. The advent of neonic, right? All the neonics in the market, we're controlling below ground insects and up and above ground insects. Well, if you think about treating an acre of seed, you're talking maybe 6-7 pounds of seed, right? Or up to 20, whatever, versus a foliar spray for some of these insects where you're covering 100% of that acre. So the exposure to the actual crop is pretty minimal, and then the other thing is labor. How many times can you if you're flying somebody over in an airplane or a ground rig, if you can control with a seed treatment, how much labor costs that save the grower?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's kind of go then from the beginning. You said, all right, we know the need for it. And like you said, from a cost, I can make probably the argument, you can probably make the argument of everything that you're doing that's a crop input, the cheapest, biggest return is seed treatment. Is that an accurate statement?
Very much so. I mean, I use the analogy at work all the time. I mean, I'm sitting in meeting rooms with people that sell crop protection, fertilizer, or herbicides, fungicides, insecticides. And I always tell them, guys, the first thing you need to be talking about is the seed treatment stuff here, right? Because if your crop doesn't come out of the ground, there's no need for you, because you're not going to be able to sell anything. Mm-hmm. So we assure, our whole premise is to make sure the grower gets the crop off to a good start, good stand, that's, even across the field. And one big thing that people overlook too, when you have a seed treated field, I would almost assure you that the row is going to close a little quicker. Okay, if you can shade out more disease, it just lends itself to better weed control, because it's more uniformity, less gaps in the field, just overall uniformity of the crop.
Let's talk about the fact that most seed doesn't get planted naked in this day and age. We're recording this here at the end of 2025. I know this is not news to the people that keep up with XtremeAg. It's probably completely news to the folks that live in the suburbs. But yes, almost everything that you tear into, that expensive genetics, those bags, they come with seed treatment on them. But a lot of times, it just comes that way. I don't have a clue as to what the hell's on that. Am I right?
100%. I mean, a lot of growers I know pull up to the store at the retail where they're treating their beans, having their over-treated on corn or, on beans, and they'll just say, I want treated seed. Well, they're going to get, whatever preferred color the retailer is using, whether it be red, blue, pink, or purple. I mean, they're going to get the seed. But I would just ask that they ask the dealer, what are you actually putting on there, right? I mean, there's a whole cupboard full of fungicides, like our base is iproconazole. There's insecticides like neonics, and there's nematicides like our nematicide Nemaxa. So it's always good to ask.
The things that get put on a seed are a fungicide, a nematicide, and a neonic.
Fungicide, insecticide, nematicide, and then rhizobium inoculant on a lot of soybeans. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And the point is, someone who's listening to this says, I don't make that decision. I just, whatever comes on my seed, right?
Correct.
Most producers are just getting whatever comes from where they buy their seed.
Correct.
So does a farmer need to not only then ask what's on it, but then if it's not got what you think it should have, where do they then should they? Because I know some producers have their own seed treatment, seed treater on their farm, right? So tell me what do we do next?
Well, the big thing is it's no different than crop planting with their retailer, right? If you're going to go out there and plan for what weeds you're always going to anticipate on, you should be planning for the same thing on your seed that you're going to plant in that field. Maybe not every field is going to act the same way. It's no different if you have a weed in one area of your farm versus the other area. You need to basically write prescriptions based on what you're going to plant. I mean, the best way to describe this, and I know farmers have a short mentality. I grew up on a farm. I was no different. My dad was no different. At harvest time is the best way to keep track of, what the problems in the field, right? You know what's out there at harvest time. You can make notes of it or what you observed through the growing season, make notes, and then next spring when you're planting, you can plan out to prescribe the right products for that area of your farm.
So that's the other thing. So do you think that more producers should have a seed treater on their farm? Probably so. You're the seed treater. You're biased, I'll admit, and you'll admit, but it seems like, again, it's a pretty low cost of all the shit that goes on around a farming operation. The bang for the buck probably is there.
Yeah, there's some nuances to treating, right? Treating is not a science, it's an art, okay? It's not easy to do. It's not the easiest step process. I think there's a shift, though, as growers become bigger and manage more acres, they're taking more control. So we're seeing a big shift in the marketplace where growers are now buying their own equipment, treating their own seed, and that's up to each individual grower. Generally speaking, though, these retailers that are downstream treating for the seed, a lot of them treaters are $150,000, $200,000 a unit, right? I mean, they're putting on precision type application rates because when you're looking at products that only require 0.05, 0.08 ounces per 100 pounds of seed, you need some pretty delicate equipment to make sure it gets put on right. So it's not for everybody to do it themselves, but it's certainly worth looking into.
Yeah, and like you said, a larger operator that has doesn't hire out their spraying and doesn't hire out their trucking and all that kind of thing, then they would be the ones that would be. But it's not exclusive to them. But the point is, if you're a smaller operator, you just need to have a more active say in what is being put on it. And there are plenty of retailers that I think would they change what's on it? Would they do a special order?
Yeah, there's a lot of more demand, like nematodes, right, are the number one disease or issue against soybean growers in the U.S. Right? They reduce yield by the biggest pest of anything in the U.S. outside of any crop pest we're working with. I don't think a lot of people are asking for nematicide specifically, and where you're coming in, you got nematodes, you've tested them, you need to ask for the nematicide, right, like our Nemaxa. If you go in there and you're getting a standard fungicide and insecticide, you need to ask the gentleman or the person running the equipment or your business planner at that retail store, what nematicide are you offering? I need to be looking at nematicides, or added in. A prime example is with Pythium or Phytophthora, right? The core active ingredient is metalaxyl or mefenoxam. In certain areas of the world, we might not have an issue, but where you do have them, we want higher rates, right? So if you have a known area, you got to have an increased rate. Generally, the treaters set at a certain amount, but you need to ask, hey, I know I'm planting over on the north side of the North 80, and I know I got bad Phytophthora. I need to add more mefenoxam to that to add control. It's no different than spraying a weed for weed control.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is one of those that, as a producer, you can understand where they wouldn't even know. I mean, I get it. I'm not the real farmer here, and the guys listening to this might disagree, but it's a lot to even know what thing. I mean, you might know how to treat a weed or how to do those things, but treating a seed is a different story there because of that. I didn't even know you can vary the rate. You can put, of course you can. You can put more on a seed. I don't know why I didn't think that. I feel stupid. I feel like 56 years old and I just learned another thing, but I do that every day. I learn something new every day.
In the old days when products were really heavy and there's a lot of volume, you couldn't really do that, right? Because we call real estate on the seed.
Yep.
Okay. It can only hold so much.
Right.
But now with these highly active products where they're ultra low rates that are super active, we can put more products on and get more bang for the buck. I use the analogy, and I know you'll remember this. Remember seeing the old pictures of how many kids you can get in the Volkswagen before they spill out?
Yep.
That's how it looks like with the product on the seed. It can only hold so much. And then once you get it on the seed, you have to be able to plant it, right? We don't want to obscure planting. So everything we're doing when we're treating has all been tested and thought through to make sure we don't obscure plantability.
Got it. So from the standpoint of then the product that goes on there, I can't have a say so. I mean, your job is you're the portfolio manager for seed treatments. Is it your job to sell that to the retailers? Or is it your job to sell that to the operator that has their own ability to do this on the farm? Because as we said, most don't. Most get the seed this way. Who do you talk to?
Well, we talk to mainly our distribution channel partners, our seed companies, right? We sell through distribution, through their retail network. We sell directly to them. And then there's certain seed companies that we sell direct to where they're treating their own seed with our products. And then they, have their own dealer network they go through. We won't sell to growers directly. We go through the channel like any major chemical company would.
What's the mistake that you see then? You think it's just not knowing what's on it? Just kind of checking the box? Yep, I bought treated seed. Is that the biggest mistake the producer makes?
100%, right? They want, I need treated seed. Okay, what do you got? Well, we got this stuff. Well, what is that stuff? I mean, yeah, it's really not that complicated, but have a base understanding, right? Are you getting a good fungicide like Ipconazole? Are you getting a good insecticide, one of the neonics, either, imidacloprid or thiamethoxam? Or are you getting a nematicide like Nemaxa? Just to having your bases covered, the basics. I mean, they all work pretty good, but it's just levels of control, right? One is going to do a little better than the other, and, as a stair step in control.
What about then climatological? You're in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm guessing you have a hell of a bunch of different, you might grow soybeans, which I don't know why North Dakota became a soybean state, but it did. And then my buddy Matt Miles down in the Delta of Southeast Arkansas, is the seed treatment, I got to think that there's a big call for changed seed treatment between McGee, Arkansas and Fargo, North Dakota.
Yep. So I'm glad you asked that question, because the one thing about diseases and different things, right? They work in various soil types and temperatures. Okay. Yep. If you look at Pythium, where it's warm and a little cooler than wet soil, where Phytophthora comes in warm and wet. So it really doesn't matter where you're planting, if you're in Fargo or if you're in Stuttgart, Arkansas, right? You're always going to have stresses that you plant your seed into, whether it's warm and wet, cold and wet. There's various insect pathogens or insects throughout the field, no matter what. But the biggest thing I've always remembered in all my years is that once you have your seed treated, you plant in the ground, it's done, right? There's nothing you can do about it. It's in the soil. We've always had the best results with weather events within 3 to 4 days of something happening after you plant. Mm-hmm. You can't control the climate. Rainstorm comes in Indiana, doesn't your temperature drop 20, 30 degrees virtually? Yeah. That's going to cool the soil temperature. It's no different anywhere. So we find some of the biggest attributes after the seed is planted.
Okay.
You just can't control that stuff.
There was, I actually, for my trial at my place, I did get a bag of soybeans that were untreated. And I said, I thought all seed came treated. And the word was, later in the season, we don't put seed treatment on it because we might have to take this back. And so that was the word that I got. Is that a true statement?
I think that is true from a standpoint. That was the analogy and the farmer mentality and the dealer mentality for forever. Okay. But now with all the on-demand treating, right, you can treat up on demand. And that's what people are doing. Like I said, the biggest thing, if you leave the last 40 acres untreated because you're worried about not carrying over any seed, my biggest thing is, what happens when you have that rain event 2-3 days after planting, right? Or it gets super hot and dry for 10 days. With this on-demand plant treating equipment that everybody has, you can go and get an extra bag. Yeah. That's for, I call them excuses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're not talking about that big of a hassle, and it's also not that much money. What am I talking about from a cost standpoint? Okay, a bag of seed corn is what, $350?
Yeah.
All right. And how much is it? Okay. How much am I going to treat a bag, a unit of seed corn with?
It's all over the board. Corn generally, it's going to come included in the price of the seed, right? But if you want over the top nematicide like Nemaxa, you're talking $4 or $5 an acre. Okay. It's for an additive. Because corn companies are really good about putting really good products on, all the way from fungicide to insecticides, right? They want, you got to think of it this way too. They're not going to put crap on their seed because when they go against their competitive seed company, they don't want their stuff performing under
Flop.
par.
Yeah, they don't want to. They don't want to. Again, just like they know, they're getting a hell of a bunch of money for a bag of seed. Let's not cheap on the. You just said
Correct.
$4 to $5 for an acre. Well, that means, and a bag of seed goes 2.3 acres or something like this.
Yeah, you're talking, they're $4 an acre for nematicide, and that's really not that bad of a deal.
Yeah, so you're talking there's $9 to $10 worth of seed treatment in a bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, $9 to $12. Yep.
Okay. I did trials on my farm with a company called Title Grow, and it was part of the XtremeAg thing. And one of the plots we did on soybeans was just putting seed treatment on because we bought naked seed. Well, we actually got donated from us, to us from Channel. I don't know if it was just the seed treatment, but it was 20 bushels better than the control. That seems like an incredible return, almost like unbelievable. But I was there. I did it. I did the seed treatment. I did the planting, and I was there in the combine when my guy harvested it, and we weighed it. Is this like a statistical anomaly, or do you hear this all the time?
Well, I think that's an anomaly. Okay, 20 bushel is this. I'll just say that. I'm not surprised you're getting a yield, increase. On generally speaking, over the 50 years, you'll see 3 to 5 bushels from a fungicide insecticide application on seed. Okay, we're generally talking anywhere from $4 to $9 an acre for soybeans. Okay, you get 3 to 4 bushel. What are you talking? $30-$40 return?
Yeah,
that's pretty good return on investment. And then $20 is pretty extreme, Dave.
And we just used a corn example. You said $9 to $12 of the bag of seed is treatment on soybeans. Is it the same thing? Am I talking a few bucks an acre?
Yeah, you're talking $3 to $6 an acre generally for a good fungicide and insecticide. Another $4, $5 for nematicide. So all in, you should be under $9.
Okay, $9, and so we just did and again, one of my questions here for you was the economics and the return on investment. So for $9 on soybeans, you have enough years of experience. When you say it's 4 more bushels per acre, you're not bullshitting. You're like, no, it's probably good for 4 bushels, and that's $40. It's a 4 to 1 return.
Yeah, for a true good system, fungicide, insecticide, nematicide, there shouldn't be any issues with that whatsoever.
You've been in the seed treatment thing for a long time. I got a question for you. I'm at my Arizona house right now. So my suburban neighbors out here got told a decade or so ago that GMOs were evil, and they heard Dr. Oz talk about this. And then they would have to, hey, you're a farm person now. Tell about these GMOs. Well, what they didn't know was that we allowed, because of genetic traits and genetic genetic modifying, we made it so that we don't have to use insecticide to kill cutworm because we genetically made a plant that is resistant to that. And so the suburbanites didn't know that. They thought GMO equals chemical. And I said, actually, GMO reduces chemical. We could get there on seed treatment, it seems to me. If I'm sitting there with you and Paul, you say, hey, man, the one thing that's going to happen before I hang up my cleats and retire, the one thing that's going to happen is we're going to get to where we have seed treatments that make it so that we don't even have to use herbicide, because we're going to put something on this plant that then it causes that plant to, once it gets growing, to secrete a suppressant that makes it so other plants can't germinate. Am I off on am I out here in like some kind of crazy sci-fi world, or am I really onto something?
Well, there's 2 parts to that question. The one on the secrete thing is like in the desert. You're in the desert right now looking at cactuses, right? They have allelopathy, right? So there's only a cactus, like certain variety every so many square feet, because they give off the chemical signal from it. There's thoughts around that in alfalfa, right? They can do that. But the reality is, I don't think we'll ever see fully year-long control from any insect in a crop from a seed treatment. But we get pretty much season-long past the stage of the insect doing any damage. I think someday that'll be there. The best thing about it is the number of seeds planting per acre, right? Back in the day on your farm, a lot of guys were planting 150 pounds of beans an acre, right? 140 or 60 pounds, right? Now it's 140,000, 130,000. So the big
population.
Thing
is,
population. We're reducing the seed cost so much for the grower because of stand establishment, right? There's attributes, like I said, closing the row quicker, which shades out weeds, different things. There's just so many benefits. Root structure. The biggest thing I think you're going to see evolution from a seed treatment standpoint is nutrient ability to uptick nutrients, right? Because if you have a stronger root fiber mass underneath the plant, it's going to utilize moisture and nutrients that much more efficiently.
Yeah.
I think the next big thing in seed treatment is nutrient efficiency. We're going to probably be allowed to reduce our nitrogen, phosphates, because the plant is using it much more efficiently. I think.
By the way, this ties into something that we've covered infinitely, not really infinitely, but a lot at XtremeAg, and our guy Kelly and all that. Like, cut back on nitrogen, because you know what? You don't ever do in agriculture. You don't ever cut back on nitrogen, because by God, in American agriculture, we grow corn, and to grow corn, you have nitrogen. We have overapplied, Paul, the heck out of particularly the big three in PK, particularly in P, probably. And so when you say seed treatments can tie into this, I'd say there's all kinds of things that tie into it. Probably 100%. Our practices, just improving it, organic matter, so that the water's not, running off into the ditch and getting rid of our nitrogen and phosphorus that way. There's all kinds of things. But how does seed treatment help me reduce applied fertility?
Well, currently, if you're using a good fungicide insecticide system with nematicides, and generally, if you're doing root scans and digging up the plants, right? Because most generally, if you're walking a field, Damian, you're not digging roots, right? You're looking above the ground.
Yep.
But below the ground, on average, we're finding 25 to 35% more weight mass on a root. Okay. All that weight mass is from root hair, root fiber. Okay. And that's where all your water and nutrients are, absorbed to support the plant. So if we're utilizing water and nutrients more, I think in time there'll be products that will eventually help utilize the nitrogen and current minerals and nutrient capacities in the soil to utilize them more efficiently. You're seeing it from phosphate efficiency. There's a lot of products coming on the market that are going to be nitrogen more efficient, to basically absorb more of what's in the soil. Instead of it all being bound up for whatever pH, whatever reason, you utilize it more efficiently.
That seed treatment, we talk about, like, for instance, a lot of fertility, and this is one of the things I've learned with XtremeAg, is putting it out there all in the fall. Well, there's no way in hell it's going to be there come July. How would you expect that to happen? What about seed treatment? Is it only good? It's really only good for until we get past germination, right?
Yeah, generally the current fungicide and insecticides that we use, they're good on the seed. You plant the seed, it grows. Generally, by the time 3-4 leaf of any plant comes around, it's wore its use off, right? So the whole intent is to get the seed out of the ground, growing uniformly and vigorously.
As quickly as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, and uniformity, because that's the other thing. Yeah.
Carry over on seed, right? So on corn, you have a lot of product that, you get bags that are carried over, right? That product normally does not go bad. It's carried over. It doesn't hurt the germ on the seed for the next year. So the technological improvements over the years have just quite remarkable how they've advanced.
What did I not ask you? What thing did we not cover about seed treatment, since you're the expert here? Is there anything we didn't cover about seed treatment?
Well, I want to mention one thing around nematodes, right? So nematodes is the biggest yield robber for the American soybean grower. And generally speaking, I don't even know if people know they have them. Okay. Right. If you looked at the map across US where they're at, they're all the way from Winnipeg, Canada, all the way down to Florida. Okay. They're the biggest, and nobody really knows. And so there's a collaboration effort out there called the Soybean Cyst Coalition Network, right? And it's quite remarkable. It's a collaborative effort between university extension nematologists, chemical manufacturing companies, and renowned experts, right? And you can go on there. And so let's say you live in Cass County, North Dakota, which is where I live in Fargo. I can type in the zip code from where I live, and you can look on the database for all the nematode counts that have been tested in the soil to find the number of nematodes. Okay? You're going to get a general idea of the nematode issue in your county at your zip code. That's for the whole U.S. This is free to the American grower. Okay? And you can even send in, get your own soil tested, have nematode counts. But it's the biggest yield robber out there. And the one thing, them little buggers, they're microscopic. You can't really see them. But I look at it this way. Nematodes are chewing on root hair, root fiber. They're scarring on the plant, right? And they're scarring all through the season, generally attacking when it's drier, a little sandier later in the summer. But as they're attacking the plant, they create a wound, okay? And all of a sudden that wound, it creates an infection point for other diseases and pathogens to go, to infect the plant. So I think that's the most underutilized thing that soybean growers are not using today.
Nematode protection as a seed treatment, because you don't realize the risk, and in your plants then are your seed is sustaining a wound, and it's arguably costing, well, again, does it go back to that 4 or 5 bushel?
Yeah, generally speaking, you're seeing a minimum of 3 to 5 bushel decrease on every acre.
Yeah.
Nematodes are patchy in the field, but you start adding these patches up, they add up.
Yeah. Last question, though, about this from my standpoint. We know we built up herbicide-tolerant weeds because of our overuse of glyphosate, and some would say overuse but underrate glyphosate. In other words, thinking you're cheaping, and by only using a little bit of a rate, and then all of a sudden all it does is it bangs the plant back, and by God, it comes back stronger. It's like giving it a vaccine, right?
Yep.
Do we run that risk on seed treatment? Do we run the risk of creating tolerances and resistances with seed treatment? Because as you said, we don't plant naked seed really anymore.
No, it's a great question. I get asked it quite often over a lot of number of years. The reality is probably not, because you got to think about, we're only treating the seed and the exposed outside of the seed. Okay, that's in a designated area of the field. You're planting 20-inch row corn or 28-inch row or 30-inch row corn. Yep. You're not treating the center of the row. You're only treating around on the seed that's in that seed zone. So the likelihood of resistance is virtually nil.
Because really, it's because of dilution. What you just said, right?
And you're only treating that zone of protection right around.
I'm treating a zone of protection that's the size of a kernel, and
exactly.
in the scope of a square foot, there's a hell of a lot of stuff that then is not treated. So that's why you think that we don't build up the resistance. Whereas with herbicide tolerance and resistance, it's because every weed got touched with the chemical. It's just a matter of, did it get touched enough to kill it, or to again give it like a vaccine treatment?
Yep.
Interesting. Last thought. You think that we're going to agree, there's an economic loss being sustained by growers not paying enough attention to seed treatment. It's one of the cheapest things we can do for our bang for our buck. And it starts as simply as asking where you buy your seed, what the hell is on this? And I need to probably be a little bit more focused on that as a producer.
100%. I mean, big thing is I grew up on a farm where we raised everything we raised for seed, right? So everything we produce, there was an old sign above the door in the office: if you plant junk, you harvest junk, right? So your biggest investment is what starts with the seed, right? So why not start it out with a great foundation like a seed treatment package that we here manufacture at UPL?
Fantastic. If you want to learn more about this, I pulled up on my website. I want to make sure that I've got this. The website is UPL-LTD, as in limited, UPL-LTD.com. And you go and click a couple of places, and you can get to seeds for vegetables and crops, and that's where I learn about seed treatments. Am I right?
Correct.
I just pulled up my phone to make sure I can do that. His name's Paul Johnson. If you want to get more into this, you know what? Send me a message and we will cover it, because I'm really excited. This is the first time we ever talked about seed treatments. If you have any subjects you want us to go more in depth on here, please do let us know. Remember that the data conference is January 25th and 26th in Davenport, Iowa. If you're an XtremeAg member, it is free to attend, and your lodging and your food and drink will be covered as well. That's right. You come to Davenport, Iowa, and you get to hang out at a casino hotel. You get all the information. You're going to see people like Joe, or like Paul here, for instance. There's going to be several of our companies that we work with, our business partners, are going to be there to answer questions. We're going to share all the data. I'm going to be on stage on the Sunday night. So I'm talking to you about the future of agriculture. If you're not a member, you can become a member of XtremeAg for just $750. $750 for a year. You get all the access to the data, all the trial work, all the direct link to agronomy people that can help you and answer your questions, all for just $750 a year. Plus, you can go to Commodity Classic for free through our relationship with Nature's. And again, you can come to the data conference. The company's UPL. We just talked about seed treatments. His name is Paul Johnson. Thank you very much for being here, my friend.
Thank you, Damian.
Till next time, I'm Damian Mason. This is XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cutting the Curve. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.farm for more great content to help you squeeze more profit out of your farming operation.